Good. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Okay. Good afternoon. I should say good rainy afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Scottsdale Housing Agency Governing Board. And could we start with a roll call, please?
Chair Lurie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Here.
Commissioner Jamison,
Here.
Commissioner Shear,
Here.
Commissioner Dodds,
Here.
Commissioner Turgill,
Here.
Commissioner Cooley.
Here.
Okay.
Chair Lurie, you have a quorum.
Thank you. This is a time for public comment. Citizens may address members of the Scottsdale Housing Agency Governing Board during public comment. It's reserved for non-agendized items. Arizona state law prohibits the Housing Agency Governing Board from discussing or taking action on any item not on the prepared agenda. And public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Do we have any written comment cards?
No, we do not.
I'm sorry, oh, we do not. Okay, I heard we do. All right. I would like then to move forward and see if I have a motion to approve the minutes from our January 9th, 2020. I think that should be January 9th, 2025 meeting. Okay.
I'd so move. Seconded.
All right. And a roll call vote, please.
Chair Lurie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Jamison, Commissioner Shear,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodds,
Yes.
Commissioner Turgill,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooley.
Yes.
And let the record reflect they updated the date to January 9th, 2025.
Thank you. Before we move forward with the rest of the agenda, it was brought to my attention that one of our Arizona congressmen, Raul Grijalva, passed away today. And I wonder if we could just have a moment of silence in his memory. Okay, I'm going to move forward then. Item 2 on our agenda is a public hearing on the 5-year Public Housing Agency 5-year plan for 2025 to 2029. Mary?
Good evening, Chair Lurie, members of the Commission. Tonight I come before you to give you a presentation on our 5-year PHA, or Public Housing Plan, for 2025-2030, along with our annual agency plan and changes to our administrative plan. With our presentation tonight, Housing Supervisor Christina Cooley will be presenting later on throughout this PowerPoint. So let's first start with what is the mission of the Scottsdale Housing Agency. The City of Scottsdale Housing Agency's mission is to improve the lives of Scottsdale families by providing quality housing opportunities, avenues to become self-sufficient, and serving all citizens with dignity and respect. What is the Housing Choice Voucher Program? The Housing Choice Voucher Program places the choice of housing in the hands of the individual family. It is federally funded through our housing and through the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. It assists low-income families with rental subsidy or payments through something called a HAP, or a housing assistance payment. We pay, or the tenant pays, their portion generally should be at 30% of their adjusted monthly income. However, it could potentially go up to 40% per the HUD regulations. As a participant's income increases, the amount of rental subsidy that our office pays does decrease. So we are currently operating under 2024 HUD program limits that were set in April of 2024. As you can see, we fund, or we assist families between 0 to 50% of the area median income. So when we are looking at someone's eligibility, we are looking for, do they meet these thresholds with their income adjusted? 30% of the area median income, as an example, for a one-member household is $21,600 at 30%, and 50% of the area median income is $36,000. If they have $36,000.01, they are still considered over, and we even have to deny based on 1 cent. Eligibility and selection. We do have 735 traditional housing choice vouchers. Total, though, we have 780 vouchers, including all of our specialty vouchers. As I stated previously, we provide services or rental subsidy at or below 50%. 75% of our vouchers must go to families at or below 30% of the area median income. We do have a wait list that we've discussed previously that's based on preference points and dates and time of the application. The preference points that we currently have are live and work in Scottsdale, elderly and disabled, and homelessness. Additional preference points are foster youth to independence and tennis-based rental assistance. Housing choice voucher payment standards. Back in October, I came before you and we talked a little bit about small area fair market rents and what that means. So our next slide will show exactly what the small area fair market rents currently are in the city of Scottsdale. Please remember that each separate zip code in the city of Scottsdale has a separate payment standard. So up on the screen you will see the current zip codes, the ones in red like we previously discussed are. Inside, they have a Scottsdale zip code, but some of them may reside and provide utility services through the city of Phoenix or other areas, so we have to look very closely at those ones. So as you see on here, HUD sets the SAFMR, or the small area fair market rent, and in October, the Housing Board approved us to do the payment standard at 102% above the small area fair market rents. What is an administrative plan? And you will hear more about this tonight from Christina Cooley, our housing supervisor. But basically, this is a plan, and we do have a copy of it over on the desk in case anyone wants to review it for members of the public. It's to implement our policies that we use to implement our programs in a manner that is consistent with housing and urban development rules and requirements. The 5-year annual agency plan is for a housing choice voucher program, and is required HUD document that is a guide for any PHA or public housing agency covering our policies, our programs, and strategies that we intend to use to meet local housing needs that serve as the city's application for funding. Any agency that receives funds to operate HCV or housing choice voucher is required to submit an annual plan in addition to a PHA plan. It's similar in the community development block grant world where we submit a 5-year consolidated action plan, and then you hear about us once a year. We come before you and we talk about the annual action plan. So they have the same acronyms, they just have a different meaning. So both sides of the house at Housing and Community Assistance do exactly the same thing, we just have different terminologies in which we do it. This year, the city has completed and will be submitting the 5-year plan program for 2025 to 2030. And the public comment period is currently open. It is available. We have done public notices in the papers, and it is on our website for review. You may submit a public comment directly on the Housing and Community Assistance website, and all public comments will be directed directly to Christina Cooley. So what is required in our PHA plan? I will tell you the PHA plan is not as thick as the Consolidated Action Plan, so that is a positive, but we must provide specific information in this plan. We have to provide the number of housing vouchers, and I previously stated we have 735 traditional, but we have 780 total, including all of our specialty vouchers. We currently have 544 of those vouchers utilized as of February 28th of 2025. The PHA plan must identify any revisions made to its policies and procedures, that's our admin plan, and the plan must also identify our housing needs, our financial resources, our policies regarding eligibility, selection and admission to the program, rent determination, operation and management policies, and a summary of the previous fiscal year's program performance. Currently, we are operating at 111% of our budget authority. Some additional requirements of the PHA plan is we must list grievance procedures, self-sufficiency incentives, previous year's audit information, which we had 0 findings at the Housing and Community Assistance Office, and public involvement. And we started our 45-day public comment period on February 21st, 2025. We have to submit certifications of compliance, so this will be something you'll be signing on April 10th when we come before you to submit. We have to submit a certification of compliance with our PHA plan and civil rights certifications. Certification that our PHA plan is consistent with our 5-year consolidated action plan. You will be hearing about our consolidated action plan on April 10th as well. And then compliance with all of our federal regulations. These are all the forms that have to be signed. Some additional information about our 5-year plan is we complete several different sections. They're listed up on the screen, and 2 of them that we're going to highlight tonight. We started off the night by talking about our mission. I'm going to talk a little bit about our goals and objectives for the next 5 years. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our progress over the last 5 years, and then Christina will come up and talk to you about our admin plan revisions. So our overall goals and objectives are to serve the needs of low and very low income persons, provide and expand safe and affordable housing, implement revisions to our administrative plan, further fair housing. Our goal is to achieve high-performing rating status under HUD's annual Section 8 Management Assessment, or CMAP. I am proud to report over the last year, though, we did increase our CMAP score from 85 to 89. So we did increase it by 4 points, and we are only 1 point away from being considered a high-performing housing agency. And we'll continue our Landlord Advisory Board. So what does it mean to provide avenues to become self-sufficient? When we talk about self-sufficiency, we talk about our family self-sufficiency program. And we're working to continue to explain the FSS program in our briefing videos. New HCV voucher holders will receive brochures, and the FSS specialist's contact information. Housing specialists will continue to encourage eligible participants to sign up. FSS specialists will recommend and continue to recommend participating at career services at Vista del Camino, and Paiute Neighborhood Center, and establish and maintain partnerships with community resources, and extend foster youth to independent vouchers to 5 years if they are enrolled through FSS. Quality housing opportunities, which is on the previous slide. Administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program, offering rental subsidies to lower income families, including senior citizens, persons with disabilities, and people experiencing homelessness. We'll enhance a person's quality of life through housing rehabilitation programs, which includes all of our housing programs in the Community Development Block Grant Program, along with Operation Fix-It, which is now part of Housing and Community Assistance. The Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership will develop and preserve affordable housing and support nonprofits in preventing homelessness and housing insecurity. We will continue the tenant-based rental assistance program. Tribal funds through gaming revenues may assist with security deposits. This also aligns with the broader housing strategy to increase housing stability and reducing homelessness among our older residents here in Scottsdale. We will continue with portability, which supports housing choice and personal responsibility by allowing voucher holders outside of Scottsdale jurisdiction to relocate within the city limits. We have housing reports, which are on our website, and we are in compliance with Senate Bill 1162, in which Arizona cities must publish a housing needs assessment. This report has analyzed population and job growth projections, available land for housing, and the number of new homes needed to address shortages and workforce housing demands. We also will continue the Landlord Liaison Program to expand affordable housing by continue to build partnerships with our property owners. And last but not least, expanding opportunities, increase utilization, and high-performing housing agency, which I talked about through our CMAP score. Moving on to our progress report, and this is a summary of what we have done over the last 5 years. We have kicked off the Landlord Engagement Initiative. We have implemented moving on strategies, which you will hear tonight about from one of our housing specialists. We have issued an intent to award project-based vouchers in February 2025. Our CMAP score has improved by 4 points. We were chosen by HUD in Wave 1 of the e-voucher management system, and Inspire. We have been a part of the pilot project for Inspire, which is a new way to inspect housing units instead of housing quality standards. So some housing agencies are just starting to implement this, but because we were a pilot project, we've been utilizing this for currently 2 years. And the EVMS is a way for us to look, it works like a checkbook or a bank book. We can go on our HUD bank account and see what our balance is at any given time. We have doubled participation in our FSS program from 20 participants to 41. And then we recently received an award from the Department of Housing and Urban Development for an additional 10 VASH, Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing vouchers. Additional information about our progress over the last 5 years is contained within the PHA plan and the annual action plan, annual agency plan that was provided to you before this evening. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Christina Cooley to start to talk a little bit about our administrative plan and conclude the presentation.
Good afternoon. The primary purpose of an administrative plan is to establish the policies and procedures that a PHA will follow to administer its housing programs, ensuring compliance with HUD regulations. HUD requires a housing authority to develop and maintain an administrative plan to ensure our housing programs are operated effectively and in compliance with federal regulations. This year, it includes the following changes. In Chapter 1, we added regulatory language pertaining to the effective dates of HOPMA. HOPMA stands for Housing Opportunity Through Modernization Act. This was a law passed in 2016. However, the implementation date has been postponed several times. At current, we do have some provisions of this law that will go into effect July 1st, but we are still waiting for further guidance from HUD on the implementation date for the rest. However, we are preparing throughout this admin plan, so you will hear that a lot, that these updates are per HOPMA. So the regulatory language pertaining to the effective dates of HOPMA implementation, and we established a threshold of $50,000 in administrative fee reserves expenditure, which would require approval from the governing board. So anything beyond the $50,000 will require your approval. In Chapter 3, we added language that expanded the protections for those applying for assistance under Violence Against Women's Act, or VAWA, to those who are victims of economic or technological abuse. And we removed the requirement to provide written materials to all applicants on locations and characteristics of neighborhoods, to include grocery stores and things like that, because that information is now available to them online. In Chapter 4 and throughout this plan, we have, for greater consistency in business operations, changed the term calendar days to now adopt business days. We have established that in the future, the Scottsdale Housing Agency would have separate wait lists for both the tenant-based and the project-based vouchers that we are attempting to award, or we did an intent to award on. Per HOPMA in Chapter 5, we added clarification that foster child or adults in a household would help in determining what voucher size to be issued to the family. In Chapter 6, we updated the application of increased payment standards onto a participant's file. Will happen at either the interim or the annual exam, whichever comes first, to further relieve financial burdens to all tenants. And we clarified that a general financial hardship provision required under HOPMA will not be implemented until that HUD compliance date. So prior, we would implement, or we would update the increased payment standard at the next annual, now the next time we touch their file. So if they get a rent increase or something prior to the next annual, we're going to add that new payment standard, so that's going to reduce their burden. And so it would help to allow them to continue to afford that. In Chapter 7, we extended the initial term on our Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing vouchers to 120 days per operating requirements. We have also adopted a policy to allow for missed and rescheduled new voucher briefings off of a wait list can be used for good cause only, which will be defined as something out of their control. And so instead of them asking to delay it for a couple of months when they're ready to accept a voucher, it would be for good cause only. In Chapter 8, we added a policy that the family must allow a reinspection of a failed unit within 30 days to improve compliance with inspection enforcement. Even if the compliance timeline is not for beyond 30 days, we would like to do a 30-day inspection to make sure that there is progress being made towards that repair. Chapter 10, we have updated policy to allow self-certifications as verification under VASH operating requirements for certain items as outlined in the regulation. In Chapter 12, we revised our repayment agreement methodology for monies owed back to the housing agency to reduce administrative burden on staff and seek full reimbursement of federal funds owed to our agency by clients. And in Chapter 15, we recently did an intent to award project-based vouchers in February of 2025. To plan for this, we have added some things to our administrative plan. We would require types of services at each project designed to help the residents that reside there. We would add the circumstances that allow us to add new units under accessibility, housing inventory, or a disaster. We would utilize a small area of fair market rents to establish the payment standards, though that is not required for project-based housing. And we would remove units which are not in compliance with inspection standards. The timeline of the PHA plan that we are going through is as follows. The 45-day public comment, as Mary referenced, was opened on February 25th through publication and posting onto our local website. On February 26th, a group of active housing choice voucher participants joined together and formed the Resident Advisory Board as they reviewed all items and unanimously gave their approval for this year's changes, updates, and the plan. Today we are here as the first public hearing. The second will be held on April 10th, or will be before you again. And public comment will then be closed. Our deadline for submission to HUD this year is April 15th for all of the items that we're discussing. And that concludes the presentation, and we are available to take any questions.
I am confident there will be some questions. Okay.
I might have a few. Thank you so much. Always good to get caught up. Thank you. I appreciate that. The Housing Choice Voucher Program, federally funded, am I to presume that that's through March, through this month, or is it going to, do we have details beyond? Oh, Mary's just smiling already. Thank you. What do you know, Mary? What do you know?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission. As you know, the federal government is currently operating under a continuing resolution that is set to expire at midnight on March 14th, which is tomorrow. I do know, I did watch the House passed a bill, and it is currently lying with Senate to make those decisions. I did watch Senate Live on the PBS channel, and it is still up in the air, so I know nothing other than the first budget that made it through the House says to continue at current levels through September of 2025.
Very good. On to the SAFMR, or SAFMR. Any results, any impact on that so far? Has it helped?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, there are no big impacts to report at this time other than our HAP expenses are slightly escalating upward, but we are continuing to monitor our financials actively with HUD to ensure no shortfall.
On the 5-year PHA plan, any public comments as of yet, or all quiet? Good.
No public comments to date.
We like that. One more question, Your Honor. Goals and objectives, well, or for that matter, admin plans, general fair housing policies. Did the agency interact at all with the DEI office in the city on fair housing? Was there any interaction there?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, we did work with the DEI office in regards to ADA compliance.
Very good. And I presume that
That
longer do
is
that,
still
because there's-
continuing. The
really?
ADA self-evaluation, it now falls under the Office of Public Communications, and the transition and self-evaluation plan for ADA compliance for the city of Scottsdale will take approximately 16 months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mary and Christina. Appreciate the presentation. I see the progress on the time I've been on this board. Let's just keep moving forward. Let's get that additional 1 point so we can all have those shirts that say high performing, and that would be delightful. I do have a couple questions. Just roughly, it looks like we're a couple hundred vouchers that we have available that are not being utilized. And so what are the primary reasons that there's that gap?
Chair Lori, members of the commission, is an award in a payment contract, but we are currently in pending status regarding that and the project.
Thank you so much.
Our end of it is it's been intended to get them.
Looking around, I see no further comments, but I had a couple questions. Don't go yet. So 735 housing choice vouchers right now in a waiting list. How long is that waiting list? How many people are on it? And
Chair Lori, members of the commission, our current wait list is approximately 1,388 individuals. It'll take approximately 30 months to get through that wait list, depending on budgetary authority and the impact of small area fair market rents.
okay.
And attrition.
As consistent with what Commissioner Scherer mentioned, I was really pleased to see that CMAP rating moved from 85 to 89, and would love to see it move up into 90. And but congratulations on the movement, as well as the landlord engagement, which I think is so important. So,
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, my kudos goes to our housing supervisor, Christina Cooley. She really does a phenomenal job of managing the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and her staff. I couldn't ask for a better staff. So I think the true kudos lies with Christina and her staff.
I think kudos to the entire team, including Christina. Thank you very much. So next up, we have Carlo Raskin, who's going to talk about the moving on strategies.
Good afternoon, Chair Lori and members of the commission. My name is Carlo Rascon, and I'm the Housing Specialist 2 at the Scottsdale Housing Agency, and I'm here to present to you information on the Moving On Strategies voucher. So what is the Move On Strategies voucher? The Move On Strategy voucher is a special purpose voucher that's administered by the City of Scottsdale Housing Agency in partnership with the Continuum of Care. And this voucher is for individuals or families who are ready to move on from permanent supportive housing and no longer need intensive supportive services, and they are referred by the Continuum of Care. Scottsdale Housing Agency has 20 traditional vouchers that are set aside for the Moving On Strategies program. By having the 20 traditional vouchers, this frees up space in the permanent supportive housing. So, as we said earlier, we're in partnership with the Continuum of Care. The Continuum of Care is staffed by the Maricopa Association of Governments since 1999, also known as MAG. The MAG is made up of local governments and to work on issues that affect the general Phoenix residents, Phoenix metropolitan area, and they focus on things like environmental, Department of Transportation, and the MAG is made up of it's made up of 27 cities and towns. It's made up of 3 native nations, Maricopa County, portions of Pinal County, and the Arizona Department of Transportation. The COC, the Continuum of Care, is led by several stakeholders in the community, and this would include over 65 organizations that include nonprofits, governments, and private sectors. The Continuum of Care also includes individuals that have experienced homelessness. The Continuum of Care is a national program whose main goal is to prevent homelessness, and they do this by funding nonprofits, providers, state and local governments, and by promoting access to and effective utilization of mainstream programs by homeless individuals. Okay, so the implementation. We started May of 2021. The continuum of care in the city of Scottsdale and Maricopa County began in planning the Move On strategy. In November of 24, we joined the initiative and got allocated 20 Move On strategies vouchers. We had a first referral in January of this year, 2025, and they're going through a process right now, and they'll be giving a Move On voucher on Tuesday, our first family. So how does the Move On strategies work? So the continuum of care refers individuals or families from the permanent supportive housing to the Scottsdale Housing Agency. Again, these are individuals or families who are ready to move on from permanent supportive housing and no longer need that intensive support services. The applicant goes through the application process, through the eligibility process, and I'll go over the referral form in a second here. One back, please. Thank you. So the Move On strategies participants lease up in Scottsdale, and they're assisted by the referring caseworker at the continuum of care and at the permanent supportive housing. This help that we get from the permanent supportive housing caseworker eliminates some of the kind of duplications of us talking to the applicant, making sure they have all the documentation. The caseworker assists us to make sure that the applicant has all the documentations. And this reduces administrative burden on the PHA staff. Participants are responsible to pay 30% of the rent. And this is here, the next slide. The next slide is going to be our Move On workflow process. So the applicant is identified by the permanent supportive housing caseworker, and that's referred to the continuum of care, and the participant is in the permanent housing for 3 or more years. The permanent supportive housing provider will complete the Move On assessment and give that to our continuum of care, which in turn gives us that referral. The screener is referred to the city that best suits it for that the applicant. The public housing agency receives the referral, and we review the referral, and then we coordinate with the point of contact at the PSH, which is the permanent supportive housing, about that applicant. And then the public housing completes the intake, and again coordinates with the permanent housing supportive case manager to go through the eligibility process and make sure that applicant is eligible for the program. Once the applicant is eligible, then they have the housing choice, the Move On voucher program, the Move On strategies voucher, and then they can seek housing in the city of Scottsdale. Once they lease up, they stay with the program for the entirety of the voucher, and the PHA, if there's issues with once they're participating, then we can always coordinate with the original case manager of that applicant to kind of eliminate some of those issues that might go on and help them out with the wraparound services if need be by the case manager. They're taken away from the wrap services, but if need be, the case manager from that permanent supportive housing is always available to call them to kind of talk that with the participant. This here is the Move On referral form that we use for referrals, and they go through a checklist of different things that they need to be qualified for the Move On strategies voucher. So a little checklist there is that they have one of the members of the household needs to be a U.S. citizen or a qualified immigrant. If they are, then we proceed to the next one, which the next question is if any member of the household is subject to lifetime sex offender registration in any state, then they cannot proceed with the program. If they're not, if there's a no to that one, then we go to the next requirement, and that is that no member of the household can ever be convicted of manufacturing of or production of methamphetamines on the premises of federal assisted housing. If no one's convicted of that, then they go to the next requirement, which the household is actively engaged in a transitional housing with a caseworker or self-provider, and they've been in there for 3 or more years. If it's a yes to that, then they go on to the next one, and the next one would be the caseworker, service provider, works directly with the household, and they determine that they're more likely able to be succeed in our Moving On Strategies voucher. And then, Chair Lori, members of the commission, I appreciate your time and hope that I provided information to expand on one of the great things the City of Scottsdale Housing Agency does at the Community Assistance Office. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo.
Questions?
Commissioner Cooley.
Yes, Carlo, thank you so much for the presentation. This is great news. Is there any overlap or progression between Move On and the Family Self-Sufficiency Program? Or am I just trying to blur those lines? I don't know.
They don't overlap with that, but they can be part of that. They don't overlap with that, but they can be part of the Family Self-Sufficiency Program if they wish.
Oh, that's great. Okay, super. And if I understood correctly, then the first voucher will be next Tuesday?
On Tuesday, yes.
That's
We'll be
great.
with the
Well,
family.
that's a social media moment. I hope we can take advantage of it. If the participant's willing, I think that would be super. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Carlo. This is really good news to see. Just one really quick question. The funding for these vouchers for the Move On strategy, is that from HUD as well?
Yes, Chair Lori and members of the commission, it is.
Thank you.
To clarify, we took 20 of our regular HCV and set them aside for this Move On strategies.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. All right, next item on the agenda is the Bellevue Properties Independent Entity Services Intergovernmental Agreement Extension. That is quite a mouthful to say.
It is, Chair Lurie, members of the commission. Before we proceed, I do need to make one note regarding the agenda item for the record. Please let the record reflect the IGA contract number should be 2024-016-COS-A1, which means that it's amendment number 1. To give some historical background regarding this, back in 2013, the City of Scottsdale acquired and rehabilitated a property known as Bellevue 1, located on Bellevue Street here in the City of Scottsdale. The properties consist of 8 units and are maintained and operated by a property management company. It is rented to residents at or below 60% of the area median income, subject to defined rental limits designated by Housing and Urban Development. They are different rental limits than any they're not based on the Housing Choice Voucher payment standard. So there is a different rental limit standard that is set for these because they were funded. The project was funded through the Community Development Block Grant. In the 10 years that the City of Scottsdale has owned Bellevue properties, none of the units have ever been rented to a Housing Choice Voucher participant until 2023. HUD guidance was sought at that time, and based on HUD guidance, when an HCV participant leases up in a unit, an independent entity must complete the inspections and rent reasonableness study, which are requirements anytime someone leases up. And the reason is because the City of Scottsdale owns the property. The City of Scottsdale cannot also be responsible for the inspection. So to ensure that there are checks and balances, we must provide those services or receive those services from an independent entity. The estimated cost for fiscal year 25-26 is probably around $500 total for them to do an inspection and the rent reasonable study when the person who's currently housed there goes through recertification. So with that, I ask for you to consider adopting resolution number 2025-01, entering into a contract with the Housing Authority of Maricopa County.
Do I hear a motion or any comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to make a motion. And Mary, thank you for the advance email that you provided on this subject. I thought that was very clear and helped me get a handle on this, this topic. So I am pleased to move that the Housing Agency Board adopt resolution number 2025-01 to authorize the actions as defined on the agenda.
Second.
Okay, and a roll call vote, please?
Chair Lori,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Jamison,
Yes.
Commissioner Shearer,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodds,
Yes.
Commissioner Turgel,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooley.
Yes.
And before we conclude the Scottsdale Housing Agency Governing Board, I'd like to ask if there's any future agenda items that need to be raised and considered. And if not, a motion to adjourn the meeting, the first meeting.
So moved.
Second, thank you.
Okay, and a roll call vote.
Chair
again.
Lori,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Jamison,
Yes.
Commissioner Shearer,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodds,
Yes.
Commissioner Turgel,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooley.
Yes.
Okay. We are adjourned. Do we want to proceed right into the commission meeting? Or does anybody need a break? Okay. Do you need some time to set up, or are we good to proceed?
Jean, will you let us know, and Tina, when you guys are ready? Give me the thumbs up. You're ready? Tina's ready? Jean, are you ready? Okay, thumbs up from Jean. Chair Lori, thank you for the patience. We're ready on our end.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Human Services Advisory Commission. And could we start with a roll call vote, please?
Chair Lori,
Here.
Vice Chair Jung,
Here.
Commissioner Turgel,
Here.
Commissioner Dodds,
Here.
Commissioner Shearer,
Here.
Commissioner Cooley,
Here.
and Commissioner Jamison.
Here.
Chair Lori, you have a quorum.
Excellent. This is a time reserved for public comment. Citizens may address members of the Human Services Advisory Commission during public comment. It's reserved for comments regarding non-agendized items. Arizona state law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on any item that is not on a prepared agenda. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Do we have any written comment cards?
Chair Lori, members of the commission, we do not.
Okay. So moving on, could I get a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of February 27th, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and a roll call vote, please.
Chair Lori,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Turgel,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodds,
Yes.
Commissioner Shearer,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooley,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jameson. Thank you.
All right, and this is a moment we've been waiting for. Chad, I will turn it over to you to lead us through starting with the Community Development Block Grant application funding, and with the goal of ending with a roll call vote and approving funding to go forward to the City Council.
Chair Lurie, members of the commission. So yes, the goal tonight is to finalize your formal recommendations for CDBG starting here. A quick update per an email that Mary sent on Monday. Chrysalis advised us that they will be selling the facility where they plan to operate out of in their proposal, and they asked if they could amend it. Based on where we're at in the process and consultation with our legal department and our procurement department, we asked that they could only move forward if they could proceed as originally submitted with the proposal, and they're unable to do so, so they withdrew their application. So this is the breakdown right now without Chrysalis's funding from the informal funding process.
Thank you, first off, for that email and the heads up before we arrived at the commission meeting. I'd like to, and so where that leaves us in terms of how we left the proposed funding is fully funding Family Promise, fully funding Community House, and TCAA, but no funding for CAS in a new leaf. I'd like to see if there are any comments. And Commissioner Cooley.
Well, of course he has comments. I would like us to consider adding CAS back into column A. It's just a few points shy of, well, not even a full point shy of TCAA. I did a little more research. CAS supported support services allocated 67%, that's 40 out of 60 unduplicated persons or households. They in effect tied with CAS in effect tied with TCAA for 40 households. They checked all 4 boxes on the funding priority list. And what else? Whereas TCAA has plenty of money coming to them in the way of SRP funds, I think that we should exhaust what appears to be, or there was a minute ago, $40,000. So we've got $640 and change left over. That would be my recommendation, is to, like I say, include CAS.
I have a question. Chad, I have a question for you. If the amount previously earmarked for Chrysalis was not allocated to any other entity, would those funds be available to staff to determine, to fund other programs or otherwise make use of those funds?
Chair Lurie, Vice Chair Jung, members of the commission, yes, they would be available as reprogrammed funds either this year or in future years.
So to clarify, if those funds are not used, they could roll over to a future year.
Chair Lurie, yes, that is correct.
Mr. Chair, I just have a follow-up question on the Chrysalis issue. I'm surprised to see this this evening. I thought they had done an admirable job of advising us of the change in their property, potential change in their property. But I read the memo to suggest that they were still planning to serve Scottsdale residents. Not all of these entities are based in Scottsdale, but nevertheless serve Scottsdale residents. So, you know, what was the compelling reason that they are suddenly not eligible for funding?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, reasoning was based on the activity, was not as it was in the proposals, which could change scoring, staff scoring as well. So those scores could have been augmented to what we see now and maybe been a little bit lower or a bit higher. And given the fact that we are, at that time, less than 24 hours away to determining the final recommendations, we couldn't push it back any further.
Okay, thank you. I can live with that response, but I do want to go on record in saying that Chrysalis did the above-board right thing by notifying us, and I think they deserve credit for, being straight up with us regarding their plans for the property. And also to say Chrysalis has been a long-time Scottsdale-based service provider, and they have done extraordinary work over the years. So thank you.
Yes, and Chair Lurie, members of the commission, we did detail that in our response to them, that this would not affect their funding moving forward or any other future funding opportunities, and we praise them for bringing that information to us during the scoring process.
Yeah, I feel that they bring strength to our community and would hope that they do submit a proposal again next year. Commissioner Jameson?
Thank you, Chair. Just another point on Chrysalis. They voluntarily withdrew their application. Am I understanding that correctly? Or was that based on some advice that we provided them after we looked at the other issues involved in the changes that they were proposing?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, per our email, or not, I wouldn't want to say guidance, but we said if they could not move forward as originally submitted in their proposal, then we asked that they would withdraw.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
With respect to CAS, I want to just reiterate what I said the first round of our discussions at our last meeting. I continue to be concerned about some of the prior issues and problems that were cited and in need of corrective action. That stood out to me in their proposal, and whether there was a sufficient level of impact as it relates to Scottsdale residents. So I was comfortable last time with our conclusion that CAS would not be funded. The fact that we are fortunate in one respect to have some available dollars, in my view, doesn't necessarily persuade me that they ought to be given to an organization that we didn't feel all that meritorious last time.
I agree.
I agree.
I disagree, if I might just make one more point. CAS did submit an audit, and we did get their 990. We did not get that from Community House, for example, and yet they're on there. So I was compelled to give CAS a higher score. That's why I was considering them.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to comment. I mean, I sense maybe that there's a majority interest to not fund CAS. The primary priority, from my perspective, this commission has set out is to address homelessness. Those two agencies, CAS and A New Leaf, provide significant bed numbers in the Valley of the Sun for people who are homeless. We know our homeless community moves around, so to be a stickler about, well, they're not a Scottsdale resident is potentially, I think, undervaluing the overall service that is provided by these regional service providers. And let me remind all of us that we do not have a homeless shelter in our community to serve our homeless. We don't have that. So we have to rely on regional agencies to take care of people who are in need. So from my perspective, I would prefer to split those dollars that are available from Chrysalis and spend those dollars on beds and split those dollars between CAS and A New Leaf. So they'd get $18,220 apiece. We roll it over. We don't even know we're going to exist with federal funds next fiscal year. So there's a risk there, and I'm just putting this on the record, and those are those are my points of view. I'll support whatever the majority on this commission wishes to do, but I think there's an argument to be made for not turning those dollars back unless staff can tell us tonight there is a very legitimate need for those dollars elsewhere. And absent that, I'm not willing to do that.
Mr. Chair, I repeat the same concerns I had on behalf of New Leaf, and that was that the overhead, the amount of overhead in that organization, the level of salaries, frankly, is exorbitantly high, and continue to have concern for the relatively small number of individuals anticipated to be served. So my father always used to say to me when I had a few extra dollars and I was looking to spend it, he said, what is the money burning a hole in your pocket? And, and I have that feeling as though we didn't get all that excited last time, but now we have some money available. Now we get more excited about organizations that didn't move us to find in their favor last time. Thank you.
Just one other differentiation between the other entities that we're discussing funding versus CAS. CAS is a bed. You're right, Neil. It's a bed. There's no navigation. There's no connection to other services.
I think that's not a true statement. They receive homeless members from all communities that arrive through various navigations or arrive on their own, and they do have supportive services at CAS. So I don't think that's a factual statement.
Before we proceed any further, I want to ask the city staff, if we did not spend, or I hate to use the word spend, if we did not utilize that extra $40,000, what would be the intent? Would it be some type of proposal that's brought back to the commission to vote on? Do you have a earmark, a thought where those funds would be expended?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, I do want to go back to some of the details I shared in my email last Friday when we did provide the scoring, that the estimated $160,000 is based on recent year entitlements and trends. Based on what's going on in the Washington, D.C. right now, we don't know even if we would get that 160. So anything's kind of on the table right now. If we were to have leftover funds, that would come back to staff and leadership to determine if we would bring it back into the realm next funding cycle. If we have a shortage of funds and we have leftover funds, we could use that money for our housing rehab programs that really need it, because we're already going to be a little bit short with that as well. So it doesn't have to go to public services, because we do have a cap on public services, but we can take it from public services, if that makes sense, to go to housing or something else.
Yes.
Thanks, Chair. Based on Chad's comments right now, I think we need to take the most conservative approach, not knowing what is going to happen in Washington. And like he said, we may not even have $160,000. So I think we should commit what we have on the table right now. And if there's money left over and there's a better use for that after the fact, then I would support funding the three remaining agencies.
Mr. Chairman, can I just get a quick clarification? If we do not allocate that money, it could be used in this fiscal year for another city project funded by these funds. In other words, we wouldn't necessarily roll it over to the next fiscal year, right?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, that could happen, yes, especially if the funds came in lower and we would need the funding that was expected now for some city programs. That could be the case.
I did, Mr. Chair. Well, what you just said adds some additional information from my perspective, and I appreciate that. You're saying if we do not spend the money allocated for Chrysalis, that staff sees a significant opportunity to spend those dollars on our housing rehab programs that you are indicating are already short on dollars? Is that what you're saying, that we could literally spend those dollars on housing rehab activities?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, that is a possibility, yes. We could do that. I'm not saying that's what we would do, but that opportunity is open, yes.
Well, can you say what you would do? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but we're on the spot. So what would staff want to do with those dollars? I don't want to turn them back if we don't have a sense of what staff's priority use of those dollars are going to be. I realize I'm just one vote here, but I think this information is very helpful, and it may push me off my original position to provide those dollars back to staff.
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, we would delegate that funding to the housing rehab programs and/or to assist in additional funds needed for the expansion of the food bank, which is one of the public service activities that you agreed or approved during the set-aside. So any additional funds not provided in public services would go to one of those two programs as approved in the set-aside and part of our annual action plan.
That is extremely helpful, and with that, I'm going to modify my comments I made earlier saying we need to spend those dollars on Cass and a new leaf because of the importance of beds. But I think the priorities that you've outlined are local, they're important, they're necessary, and if those dollars can be spent in that regard, I would make a motion to proceed in that direction and allow staff to make a determination on the best use of those remaining funds.
If I may, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that CDBG is, those dollars are for homelessness, and the food bank would fall into that category, I would think, but only if it was earmarked, if these rollover dollars or whatever we want to call it are earmarked for that particularly, would I be behind it. That's just my feeling on it. And back to a quick point of clarification from before about Cass, their application indicated the 4 boxes that I indicated were checked: emergency housing assistance, crisis case management, homeless supportive services and shelters in vulnerable populations, seniors and disabled. So Cass aside, if we could earmark the rollover dollars to the food bank, I'd be in favor of that idea.
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, that's not on the agenda, right?
But we may, and I trust staff too, but if CDB dollars were allocated for homelessness, I don't see how anything other than maybe the food bank, since we don't have our own shelter, I don't know, it seems like we're broadening the scope of how the dollars are used.
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, the funds were set aside for homelessness based on direction from the commission, not based on any direction from HUD. The city of Scottsdale has the right to utilize the funds as they see fit. HUD does not intervene. These, it was part of the NOFA that was sent out utilizing those funding priorities as you listed. Now, we can delegate it directly to the food bank. However, those costs, some of the costs for their projects may not reach that total dollar amount, and so we would like that opportunity to be able to utilize them for the housing rehabilitation programs based on whatever decision you choose to do tonight.
All right, so we have a motion on the table.
And just to clarify, my motion delegates our authority to staff to make that decision. And again, I'm comfortable with both of those uses, not singularly the food bank.
And those two uses would be housing rehab and or food bank expansion, correct?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, yes, that is correct. Housing rehab and the food bank upgrades.
But don't you already have that authority if we don't allocate the dollars?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, we do, yes.
So I'm not sure why a motion was necessary.
Once the resolution is passed by council, that authority is in the resolution as to,
Yeah.
because the thing is, we don't know our entitlement until after the resolution is passed, so we need that authority just in general, but it could be used in that direction as well.
I'll just clarify the motion, Commissioner Turgel. I don't want it to be an open-ended, take the money and whatever. I mean, I think staff has satisfied my need to hear priority use of those dollars, and I would agree with both of those two services as being compelling and important to our residents.
So just to clarify, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Commissioner Scherer, but the emphasis then is on funding Family Promise, Community House, and TCAA, and not extending funds to CAS and a new leaf.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Can I get a second?
I would second
Second.
And a roll call vote, please.
Chair Lori,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Turgel,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodds,
Yes.
Commissioner Scheer,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooley,
No.
Commissioner Jameson.
Yes.
Okay, moving forward to general funds. General funds, there we go.
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, on the screen right now are the preliminary funding recommendations from February 27th for FY 25-26 general funds. Also a note, these is one of the funding categories that is 100% funding as funding dictates. So we award 100% as we go down, and if there's any left over, it would go to the next agency. Currently, that situation is about all the wiggle room we have right there is what's on the screen.
Okay, so we have presumably 80,000, and the recommendation was to fully fund Scottsdale Community Partners, JFCS, a new leaf, and the YMCA program for aging seniors. Discussion?
Yes. Why is the Scottsdale Y highlighted?
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, is highlighted as it was the last one that was fully funded. That was the, traditionally we put the highlight where the line draws from funded to not funded.
Any other discussion? If not, could I get a motion?
So moved. Oh, well, I got a motion. Darn it. Well, let's see here. I move that we approve the general funds applications for funding as outlined in the agenda. Is that close enough? No? Not even close enough. Why don't I read that? Moving that FY 2025-26 general funds application funding on February 27, 2025. Really? I'm going to read all that? The Human Services Commission made preliminary funding recommendations for agencies requesting FY 2025-26 general funds funding. This agenda item allows the Commission to discuss and/or amend the general funds funding recommendations from February 27, 2025, and formally vote on the recommendations to be considered by the Council. And I would so move forward that we vote for that.
Fund those for it.
Fund those. Let's go fund that. Let's go fund that.
Second.
All right, and a roll call vote.
Chair Lori,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Turgel,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodds,
Yes.
Commissioner Scheer,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooley,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And moving forward, Scottsdale Cares.
Chair Lurie, members of the commission, I apologize, it's a little small because there were so many proposals, but on the screen is the FY 25-26 preliminary funding recommendations for Scottsdale Cares. This year, Scottsdale Cares scoring did include the Mayor's Youth Council. I would like to point out Eric is back. He's here again, skipping his spring break to help score Scottsdale Cares. And also like to remind that this is also a category with the 100% funding as funding dictates. I will also let you know that staff did reach out to Raising Special Kids, and they would very much be willing to take the award that was below the minimum they put on their proposal.
Okay. And Eric, thank you for being here, and thank you as well as Ariel for the participation and due diligence you gave to this process and looking out for the interests of raising special kids. With that, comments? Eric, I wonder if we can get you to go up to the microphone, please. Last time we were at the community building across the street, and it was much easier to hear in that setting.
Chair Lori and members of the commission, me and Ariel and the rest of the SMYC are very grateful for the opportunity to have this opportunity to be part of the funding process. And we are grateful for the insight this has given us to its city operations. Thank you.
And thank you again for your participation. If there are no comments, could we get a motion?
I'll move to adopt the funding recommendations. On February 27th, the Human Services Commission made preliminary funding recommendations, the agency requesting FY 25-26 Scottsdale's their funding. This allows the commission to discuss and/or amend Scottsdale funding recommendation from February 27th, 2025, and formally vote on their recommendations to be considered by City Council.
Seconded?
A second?
Seconded.
Okay, and a roll call vote, please.
Chair Lori,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Turgel.
Yes.
Commissioner Dodds,
Yes.
Commissioner Shear,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooley,
Yes.
and Commissioner Jameson.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and that brings us up to SRP MIC funds, where we have TCAA for the senior nutrition, the congregant and home delivered meals for $130,000. Discussion? If not, a motion, please.
I'll be happy to move that the commission ratify our informal recommendations by tonight, recommending to the city council we fund TCAA for senior nutrition programs in the amount of $130,000, utilizing SRPMIC dollars.
Second.
All right, and a roll call vote.
Chair Lori,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Turgel,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodds,
Yes.
Commissioner Shear,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooley,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and our last category up is the endowment funds. And for those that missed the last meeting, I think we concluded that we were not particularly pleased with either of the proposals and recommended rolling those funds over and hoping that we get stronger proposals for the following year. And with that, any discussion or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we forward our preliminary recommendations on the endowment funding to the City Council as stated previously.
Okay. And a second, please?
I second.
All right, and a roll call vote.
Chair Lori,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Turgel,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodds,
Yes.
Commissioner Shear,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooley,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great work, team. I know that's a lot of effort on our part to read all those proposals, and I really thank you all for your due diligence and efforts, including the members of our Mayor's Youth Advisory Group. So thank you all. This is a point in our agenda to identify future agenda items. Looking around. I have one, and that's that I'd like for us at a future meeting before the conclusion of our meetings in May, when we break for the summer, for us to have a discussion and a review of the process that we follow related to reading and ranking the proposals. One of the things I'd like to advocate for is that in future years we have a working session before we do our ratings so that we can voice our concerns and share them as a group. And unless there's further items, I would...
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Just a note, we had a Zoom meeting on Monday or Tuesday, I forget, about the Scottsdale Cares funding. And I guess, Kira, is that going to come back to the commission at some point in the near future?
Chair Lori, members of the commission, yes, it sure will. I can put that on the agenda for an update.
Excellent. Okay. Look forward to hearing about that. Thank you. All right. And I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Okay. All right. And a roll call vote, please.
All right, Chair Lori,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jung,
Yes.
Commissioner Turgel,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodds,
Yes.
Commissioner Shear,
Yes.
Commissioner Cooley,
Yes.
Commissioner Jameson.
Yes.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
Hey, Gene.